Welcome back to another episode of the Men Can Project podcast. I'm your host, Lockie Stewart, and today we have a phenomenal bloke, Cambo. Adam Kambouris, how are you, mate? Good day on the show.
Thanks, mate.
We've got our YouTube running, we've got or every other platform, Spotify, podcast, all those sorts of jazzes, mate. Great to have you. It's been a long time coming, and I know it's something that you were definitely excited to be on here, maybe a little bit nervous.
Yeah, definitely, mate. It's been something I've looked forward to in a while, but finding that right platform, so yeah. I'm excited.
Well, mate, it's a privilege for me because we connected originally over social media. It'd be over a year ago. Sure.
So it's coming up to a year, yeah. I think, sort of watched each other through social media for a long period before.
Had a good stalk.
Yeah. So.
Before we decided to dive in, and it's been incredible getting to know you more, and you're such a passionate individual in everything that you do. From leading the Bulimba Bulldogs, mate, and loving your footy, but also as a family man and within your career. And I see how the drive and the passion to be your best in all of those areas is really inspiring for me. And I know a lot of the lads within our community feed off your energy because you're part of the strong men of value group or the inner circle, and you drive the boys home when we're doing testing or just at day events and stuff like that. So I think you bring a lot of that from the footy culture, which I froth on as well. So it's good to have that here. But mate, let's check in. How's everything going for you at the moment?
Yeah, good, mate. Gone through a fair bit of change sort of the last year, but sort of some solids there with the family and still figuring that out. Still figuring out the life of being a husband, a father, and juggling the roller coaster that is life into that.
Yeah.
And I think every day it's a journey. So and obviously the last year's been a huge journey for me, which we'll probably unpack a fair bit later. But yeah, it's busy being a dad and a husband, and then I play footy, which everyone keeps asking when I retire, but I continue to do it. So
you're 34 years young.
Yeah, 34.
34 years young, mate, and you're still bloody kicking it with the best of them. I love it.
So I keep telling them front rows they're only coming in their prime at this age, apparently.
It's like a bottle of wine every year, just makes them more pricey.
Yeah, exactly, apparently. So
yeah, so you're a father,
yep.
A husband, a leader on the field. You're also a leader within your workplace, and obviously you've really been spending a lot of time learning to really be the leader of your own life as well, which is starting to unpack a heap of stuff that maybe you haven't acknowledged for a long time, which has caused ripple effects. Some have been awesome, and some not so much. We've had tons of conversations, and seeing what you share with the guys on the calls and everything like that's phenomenal. But take us back, mate. Give us a rundown of Cambo, what it was like being you growing up, and because there's people, I know some guys from your footy team, but also guys within our community and people who have never even heard of you before will be listening, and they'll, we talk about anonymity, and George spoke about it on episode 250, where you lose the ability to have a first impression, right? Because of social media or podcasts. This will be the first time people have heard from you, and they'll create an idea of how they perceive you, and it's not until you actually get to know the real you that you can, in my opinion, make an informed decision. So take us back to what it was like for you growing up, and I know you've got some crazy stories.
Yeah,
and we're definitely going to dive into those.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on that first impression, and especially I've got two worlds that really define that's a footy player, and that's got its own definitions, and then at work, being a leader in the banking world, and often those two identities didn't go together, and you sort of get questioned. So that's probably a really good point. You get put in buckets as you go through life. So that's kind of why I wanted to do this and reach out and sort of tell a different story, because I think everyone's got their own story, and it's really cool when you get to hear it. So if we go right back, I had the traditional, well, it's not traditional, but the best childhood you could imagine. Two amazing parents that just devoted their whole lives to myself and my little brother. We grew up here in Brisbane. Schooling, sport, it was whatever we wanted to do, but no pressure. We just guided to be the best people we could be, and I had the best role model of a father. So I see some posts to be the role model that you didn't have all that. Mine's to be the role model I did have.
Yep.
Coming from a Greek background, Dad probably flipped some of those traditional things on its head, and he does everything to support my mum, because mum obviously worked full time her whole life as well. So it was the tradition that way, but I got shown how to treat a wife and how to treat your kids. And Dad coming from a footy background, which I didn't know anything about until sort of recent years.
Yeah, right, it's all popping its head up.
Yeah, so, but yeah, just my brother and I, we grew up in what I couldn't describe a better childhood. We had everything possibly given to us. And now I see having my own kids and financial stresses that, God, they must have sacrificed some stuff.
Yeah.
Knowing the roles that they've had and things like that, you just shake your head how they did what they did, and put us through what they put us through.
Do you think from that point, just quickly, parents should be, and once again, this is, everyone's going to have their own opinion on that, but now obviously being a parent and not really understanding all the sacrifices that your parents did make, do you think it's a conversation that should be being had within children, maybe from a certain age or anything, so we actually understand what's going on, or is it better off just...
I see, sometimes I'd say yes, but other times it's not the kid's problem.
Yeah.
I know my parents, they did it because they want to.
Yeah.
I'm still figuring that out as a parent,
yeah.
and I know there's some places where, and we'll get to that
yeah.
I need to sacrifice more, and that's something I'm learning.
Yeah.
But then you probably don't see, some things I'd like to know is like the struggles that they go through, because you obviously don't see that, and I know they would have had to.
Yeah. Look at them like they're superstars. You're just
yeah.
like, fuck, my parents are... Everyone idolizes their parents,
yeah.
that I know anyway. It's like,
yeah.
fuck, they're amazing.
Yeah, and I just can't credit, we'll go through the stories and where I am now, and still to this day, they're still the two of the best. I couldn't ask for anything better. And I know everyone says that, but I just, what they've done and what they continue to do is they're just the perfect role models and the most loving parents. And I guess that kind of took me to sort of figuring out that Dad, people think now that I would have played rugby league from when I was 5, 6. I actually didn't, and everyone's shocked at that.
Yeah, well, I thought it would have been a full-time but he came out with a football Guernsey.
I was, we don't know how, because my family is the shortest family imaginable, but I was super tall. So I was really, really tall from a young age. So I played basketball.
B-ball, man.
Yeah, and I really loved that and enjoyed it. Mum and Dad just wanted us to play a team sport, that was their one thing,
yep.
But heavily focused on school as well. So it wasn't until I moved to Iona in grade 5 that I was bigger than everyone. They're like, come on, and I was a big soft kid. Like I was a big friendly giant. You want to put it in? They said, come down and play footy, and I'm like, no, that's a bit rough. I think I don't know if I want to do that. So that took me through that, and I went down and played in the school team, and then I loved it. And then the boys got me down to play at Wynnum, and I think there was a little bit of a shiny dad's eye when I chose to go that path myself. And from there, it sort of kick-started. I realised I was pretty good at it.
Yep.
And quickly in basketball, every kid got taller than me. And I think Dad sat me down and said, you continue to play basketball, or why don't you give footy a crack if that's what you want to do? And it went on from there. And I quickly realised, and I think you spoke through it before, I had a certain level of competitiveness, and I realised...
Slight competitive. Little segue when we were doing our fitness training day, and there was one which was 100, I can't remember what it is, 100 calories per time or something, yeah. And yourself and Jesse absolutely destroyed yourselves against each other. You came back and went like 30 seconds faster 6 weeks later or something like that.
Yeah, I think I reached that lactic blackout. I think that was close to that. But from an early age, I figured out that I wasn't the most talented of athletes. And still now, I wasn't the fastest, strongest, natural footy player. One thing I realised is I could be the fittest.
Yep.
I could be the one that could outlast the longest. And I was quite as I developed into the teen years, I realised I gave as good as I copped, which often meant the word most hated player in Brisbane Rugby League was thrown around through juniors. But that was kind of my personality. But off the field, I was this completely different kid, and I think that's where I soon realised that I did do things differently.
Yep.
I wasn't your typical footballer at school, and that's from Mum and Dad. Who was.
Can you sorry, just for those, because there's people that probably don't know what you refer to as a typical footballer off the field. Like, what would your sort of definition, and then how you sort of acted? Yeah,
so this is where again we class people, and schools will class people, teachers will class people, society will class people. Which your typical footballer is. And people may get offended with me, not, but will be dumb, uneducated, doesn't want to be at school, just wants to play footy,
yep.
Rolls around with his mates, a bit of a larrikin, gets in trouble,
yep.
Do that sort of stuff. And you hear it all through school, and I think I copped it through school a fair bit, saying, oh, you want an education, you want to do an OP, he's good academically, that's not your typical footballer.
Yeah.
But define typical to me, and that's what mum and dad used to get offended.
Yeah.
And I think I had neat handwriting and things like that, and it used to be, oh, he's got nice handwriting for a boy. Well,
yeah, it's crazy, hey?
so these things started, and at the time we didn't think anything of it, but I think it started to ingrain some stuff into me to say, okay, things are going to be a bit different. So that followed me all the way through school. I was so dedicated to my sport. I literally lived sport in school. And I went to Iona College, which was an all-boys school as well. But because I was so dedicated there was other things I wasn't doing. I didn't go to parties. I didn't go to social events because I was just dedicated to my footy. And this is where I know my personality. If my brain clicks onto something, it doesn't let go. So I'm so grateful to mum and dad that they made me do school. One, I was good at it. I was good at school. And mum and dad knew just to push that right bits, and I'll talk. My brother was he was different academically, so that was another push, and it's sort of why I'm pushing him as well. But then it was mum and dad kind of knew what to do there, so that followed me through at Iona. I sort of reached a point at Iona where it wasn't for me, and I decided to change schools and moved to Clairvaux McKillop. But that was probably the best thing I did socially.
Yep.
Because I was so dedicated to sport, and I didn't interact with girls or anything outside of my family.
Yep.
So I had no social interaction there, and I know I grew really socially at Clairvaux. But then moving through there, footy started to go really well. So I'd made some rep sides through juniors. I was becoming known as a kid that could play a whole game without tackling anyone, would be fitter than most. But that came with what people didn't realise was from a young age I had the support of mum and dad from a money point of view, so I had the opportunity to do extra training. So I was 14, 15, training to school, rugby league, but then going off and doing extra training with personal trainers and things like that to work on the things. Speed training, Dad still laughs and asks where that speed training went now. But it's not. But that was the dedication I knew I had, and it was a dream. I put everything into it. And that accounted for a couple of professional systems started to take notice, which was highly unusual for a tall, lanky white kid. To be perfectly honest, that wasn't the strongest of ball runners, wasn't the strongest of things, but they started to take notice of that. And again, you get taken on a journey. I was 15 and they're showing interest, and you kind of your brain starts to click over, oh, this is actually something I can do.
Yeah.
I can make a profession out of it. Mum and Dad still hell bent on school, so I had to focus on school. But grade 12 come around and I had the opportunity to go and play North Colts, which back then was kind of pretty big. All my schoolmates were just playing 17s.
Yeah.
And North was all the way over there. I was at Clairvaux, so that meant I had to sacrifice pretty much hanging out with my mates after school, weekends, things like that. But I made that choice and was so grateful because I was arguably able to be part of one of the best North sides in 2004 to come through.
Who was in there?
I was a little 17-year-old sitting on the bench most games, getting to watch Greg Inglis in action, Adam Blair, Scott Anderson, Sam Takatisi, Sika Manu, and then there's others that were arguably some of the best goals, Colin Wilkie, Brett Mulholland. These blokes were just, and then Smith Senu, Josh Tatupu. They've all gone on to play professionally, and that was all just in one team, one North side. So I was pretty much just...
Did you win the comp that year?
Yeah, I think we won 50-6 or something in the grand final. So, and it was unheard of. And now knowing what all those kids have got, what all those blokes have gone on to do, it's quite amazing that they're all under one roof. And I learned so much from those blokes, and just watching their careers as well. But it was, it was tough because you're not a normal school kid.
What was it like, for you? Obviously, 17, being in the Colt side, was it intimidating? Obviously, exciting would have been a word, but
back then I didn't understand I don't think it was. I was nervous when I went there, but I just let my actions do the talking. And I think some of the attributes that I had got me noticed at training because I was fit. I was one of the fittest, and I thought I was doing stuff wrong. And even the cup forwards were like, no, just keep running, keep doing what you're doing. So I think I had some of those attributes.
They'd just give you the ball and be like, keep going, mate, keep going.
Oh, yeah.
Have a breather.
And I think it made me realise in life, you have different attributes, and teams and groups and things need different people and different attributes. And I realised that's what I could do really well. And I had this knack that I liked it. If we were winning 50-0 or whatever, I wasn't really, you wouldn't see me as relevant in the game. But if it was 10-12, that's when I loved it. That's when I enjoyed it. But then I didn't feel pressure or anything like that. But if I look back now, knowing that it was within grasp, I think that's where I look back, and this is where things started to turn. Because at the end of that year, so I arguably had the best year of footy. Was noticed, was the professional assistant was going to do some extra training in the off season down with them as a 17-year-old kid. School had gone well. We had a great school. Had developed socially, and it was all going really well. I was going to go overseas with the AIS team instead of going to schoolies. So again, I was giving up something. Didn't want it. It wasn't even a choice. Didn't even care. To be perfectly honest, because I didn't drink. I didn't really go to parties. I think I've been to 2 parties my whole life. Didn't know what alcohol or drinking or that was. It was just footy, and I didn't care. I didn't want it.
Is it different though, being like you're in the footy culture, which is from the outside looking in heavy into the drinking and partying and all that sort of stuff? Were you sort of an outsider in regard to that, or was most of the blokes you were playing with at that point, not getting up it?
So I didn't really in that year notice, because a lot of them were still in high school. So although like a couple of the boys that were a year older than me, they were back at Wavell again. So we're all in high school.
Gotcha.
And we all trained so much that that's all we really knew. And I think still being so young, couldn't go out, things like that. I think I went out after we won it. I think it was the first introduction. I got snuck out by a couple of boys that didn't last too long until we couldn't go anywhere else.
Fair play.
So, and I got him, he is around, but I think I was a bit naive to it too, to be honest. And I sort of hadn't latched into that world yet. But yeah, that's sort of, so you go from probably an ultimate high of a year to a day I remember vividly, and it was, I'd just done my last exam. And I went home, as I normally did, and did what I normally did every day, and parked on my car on the driveway to Hill. And somehow something happened where handbrake failed or whatever when I was at the boot, and the car's hit me, took me across the road into a brick wall, slammed. Somehow it's gone over and over the brick wall, and not gone over the top of me. I've sort of ridden on the back of it, and when I come through, so it knocked me out. I come through, and I kind of realised something pretty bad had happened. And I looked down, and I could see my left leg, and I could see the toe bar on either side of my leg. And if everyone knows the toe bar, big ball, all that sort of stuff, and I kind of couldn't put my left leg down, and I realised something had happened. So I did the stupidest thing you do, and I pulled it off. Pulled my leg off, and what I didn't know is it sort of hit main arteries. It sort of, at that stage, you know when it hit, and I just instantly sort of fainted, and we realised I was in pretty big trouble.
Was anyone around you at that point?
No, so we lived in a quiet little estate in Carindale. So I realised I had to kind of get myself to the home phone. I now know my mobile was in the car, but as I said, I don't do anything the easy way. So sort of had to crawl back up across the road, because I went
just piss and blood at this point?
Yeah, I don't really remember these bits, but this is what they can describe as, like, you just follow the blood trail. So crawled inside, and unbeknownst to me, I called called an ambulance. I said I cut my leg, and then passed out.
Do you have any photos of this time, or do they?
I think not of that. I think Mum's got photos somewhere on the computer of pre-surgery where we get see with the legs hanging everywhere.
I was going to say, if you could send me those, I'll put them up when we share you on social media.
Yeah, so I said I cut my leg, which I now have been told by the ambulance, so it's never to say that ever again, because. But what's I now know has saved me, I'll kind of tell that little bit story down the track, but so it was a quiet estate, and 2 lawnmower men just happened to be finished their job, driving down the road, seeing this car in the middle of the road, following a blood trail. And I still remember that one guy come in and virtually almost started vomiting because he couldn't deal with the blood. There was blood all through the kitchen. My leg was literally hanging out because it had gone straight through my left calf and straight out the other side and ripped the whole muscle and everything in half, and there's this huge triangle scar. And the other guy came in and did not bother him, and he'd actually just grabbed underneath the knee, which was the right place to grab, and shut everything off. And
so, do you know who this bloke is?
So these two guys, I'd never met in my life, never met anything, and they probably come pretty relevant in about 6 months down the track of this story. But the other one's got on the phone, and he's talking to the ambulance, and they're like, "Oh right, so he hasn't just cut his leg. We'll send an actual ambulance now." And
Is this when you said I cut my leg?
yeah, so they were just sending out a little car or something like that.
Oh,
So,
got a shock there.
and they're like, no, and then he's managed to get on to Dad, and I think Dad said, if anyone knows Creek Road, he reckons he's doing about 160 down that road to get home. But there's a funny story to that. It's just how we raised my mum. She won't mind me saying she's an absolute neat freak. Like, absolute neat freak. Kept the house in spotless order.
And you just sprayed it, mate.
Well, they said they needed to elevate and put it up on pillows. So he ran and grabbed the pillows off the couch and in and out of consciousness. Apparently I've yelled, not those ones, they're those good ones. I'm getting the ones from the cupboard. So
take the dirty ones.
yeah, so that went through and ended up going to hospital. And I still remember the bits I remember is I asked the nurse when we got to the hospital or there, I said, I don't care about anything else, am I going to keep my leg? And she goes, well, we can't answer questions. We're not going to answer questions that we don't know the answers to. We're not going to make promises. And I think that was for about sort of a good few hours. They didn't know what was going to happen.
And were you still like, at that point, had you been given the green whistle or what? Like, so you were conscious? Or
So I was unconscious when Dad came home.
Yep.
And that's what Dad remembers. And then I was in and out of consciousness, and then I was brought to consciousness because I lost that much blood as well, not only about the leg but just the blood. And I remember like on the green whistle, but then I remember being, I think it was to do with whether it had hit the bone, whether it had how bad the damage everything was through that. And I still remember there was sort of a bit of I think the story goes that a couple of doctors had looked at it and said whether they could fix it or not. And one guy was confident that he could fix it without skin grafts and this, and that's the one Mum and Dad chose. But that meant being transferred to another hospital and all this. And I think it was across sort of 2-3 surgeries that they got it done because the first bit they had to clean it out that bad. And then it took 1 or 2 surgeries to close. But then it got infected, which meant they had to open it back up again. And I think all up I was in hospital a fair while, but it took me, I had to learn to walk again. And it took days, and this is where I commend my mum and dad again. I think it was 5 days, and the club I was with at the time was great. It was 5 days a week I was in physio, getting it fixed.
So what was that like for you mentally though, knowing you just come off the best year of footy of your life and you had all that professional stuff and probably thinking, as you mentioned earlier, like I could have a good crack at this, and then in an instant, like you're learning to walk again. Yeah,
right there and then I kind of copped it and sheltered right up and got to that mentality when footy got tough. Right, I'm just going to dig in here and get it sorted. The answer now is, holy shit, it messed me up way more than I realised. And I remember Mum and Dad tried to not force me, but tried to encourage me through that period to get help, to go and talk to someone, because they realised it was such a big shock and all of a sudden his whole plan for life was changing. But back then we didn't get to speak about mental health. We didn't get educated on it. It wasn't anything like it is now where people are talking about it, there's books out there. I wouldn't even told you what Beyond Blue or Headspace or any of that stuff was. And it wasn't in footy culture. I'd been around the older boys and nothing, it's not their fault, but you're just told to harden up. You don't talk about emotions. So I just pushed that to the side. I'm like, no, I don't have mental health. I don't have issues. I'll just deal with this as I deal with anything. I'll just work harder. I'll train harder and I'll work harder. Which in essence worked, but I was never the same player, never the same person. So I hung around systems for another couple of years, and I credit those systems because they kept investing in me to get back. I went in hospital at 92 kilos, I think came out at 122. By the time I started walking,
122 came out.
Not out of hospitals per se, but by the time I started,
food was bad, man.
I think some other food was being brought in. But it wasn't just hospital. That was across the sort of 3-month period of learning to walk and being on my back for that period of time and things like that. But
so it was 3 months learning to walk again.
Yeah, and then I played footy 6 months later. I shouldn't have, but I had. I played Colts. But that very game, I dislocated my shoulder and had full shoulder injury.
So there was a fucking way they were going to slow you down, mate.
It was that, and so I went straight into shoulder recon, which was again sort of affected life and things like that. And I never dealt with anything. And it sort of, I wavered around sort of A grade, got back and played a few cup games, which I'm extremely proud of. Still, because I think some people think playing cups sort of is an easy thing, and I've got every proud of any person or admire any person that sort of has the will to get there and play there, because it's hard and it's good. And
that's Queensland Cup for those listening. It's huge, mate.
Yeah, so I kind of think, and I thought it was alright, but now I look back and I sort of used footy and I'd found the party lifestyle now, because obviously being out injured for so long, I was sort of 18, 19, 20, started to hang out with people, really good people, but just had different lifestyles. I didn't train footy and that, and then around the footy boys, well, the only thing that I really felt involved in, because I couldn't play or train properly, was I could go out, I could party. And again, my personality was, I'm sure as hell going to make sure I could do it the best. So I did it hard, and at times, now I look back, that was my identity, and I didn't have the identity as a player, but I had the identity as a socialite. And it was probably a different personality. I've always been an outgoing person, but this took me down a different path, which I now know was a bad path. And as I get further along in the story, and that continued in my life, I think people will say, I now know I was using it to cover up. I now using it as an escape from, I was really hurting. And even though I knew I was never going to get to where I wanted to go, and that was the NRL. That was just to play one game, but I knew I was never going to get there. But I still held a little bit of hope. I think you kid yourself. Yeah. And then I think the party life just covered that up, because I trained all week for footy in rehab, and then I could go out on a Saturday and do that.
Yeah. It's kind of contradicting when you're bending over backwards to try and make something, but then on the weekend you're going against 100%. I think people do that in. There's so many people who I work with, or even you'll see people on the footy team with you and all that sort of stuff. They're like, fuck, I'm going to do this, and then they're doing something completely different on the weekend. You're like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
100%. That was me. I lived this life. I was fit at footy and piss fit as well off the field, and you kind of wonder how fit you could have actually been
100%.
If you actually just didn't drink and didn't party all those times. So this went into a cycle. So that happened in 2004. And it took me through like a 7-year cycle. And in between that, I went overseas to play footy.
Yep. Where'd you go?
I went to England, Greece and France, and played. I only worked 6 months in that time due to contracts, things like that. So I got to do stuff that people didn't do. And everyone probably thinks and saw what I was doing, and I probably told the story of I had the best time, it was awesome. But in reality, I was running away. Like, what made me go and buy the ticket, because I surprised everyone, because I was such a settled kid, like my friends, and didn't step outside of them. I was always about my friends and family, and everyone's like, you're not going overseas. But I did it I made my mind up within a week. And that was because I had a bad day at footy, bad week at footy. I was meant to play high and wasn't told why I didn't. A bad day at work. I was in banking by this stage and trying to form that out. And I just went and bought a one-way ticket to Greece, because I knew people there from playing in the Greek rugby league and things like that, and I knew people there. And in essence, people go, oh, he's such a free spirit to go off and just try that. Or this is cool, like look at the adventures. Like, no, I was running around from reality, because I could go over there and be not the superstar's the wrong word, but I was going over there to help the Greek boys develop in league. I was there. I was living a life that I was trying to create a professional sports life.
What do you reckon? Do you wish people tried to hold you back here from running? Like, obviously, because there's people running from left, right, and centre from things in their life. Like, how would you have liked someone to, if it's even possible, or do you feel you needed that?
No, you wouldn't have. My personality just wants to put my mind to it. I was going. But no, I wouldn't change this. I wouldn't change any part of my story. And as we get further along, people go, that's crazy, because would you change not doing your legal playing NRL? Well, now 34-year-old Canberra wouldn't change that.
Yeah.
Because there's certain things in my life that happened because of that league.
Yeah.
Not happening. But I look back and I was running from it, and it allowed me to live a party lifestyle, to play footy. And hey, that's what there's so much to party, but I don't have to work. I didn't have to be like the average Joe going to work 9 to 5. I was overseas, playing in England, France, living a life. So I sort of created this fake life to try and replace the life that I thought I possibly might have got. Now, you did it. And I think there's some days over there where I now look back and God, I was lonely. God, I was empty. But would have anyone known? No. Would have the 4 blokes I lived with every single day? No. Was it days that I now realise I was down, struggling to get out of bed? Yes. Did I just drift through life? Yeah. And it was the best time of my life, but there's periods over there where I didn't deal with shit and I was just covering it up, which is, I imagine how good a time would I had if I did it not running away from something.
Yeah, or just even being present, right? Like I think, because it was the same when I went to France, it was running away. And once again, no one really knew that. Over there, you're miserable as all hell, lonely, isolated, and you know, you're still dealing with the same stuff in your head that you left the country with. It's just like, it's coming with you, fuck. But there's so much that, you know, learning to talk about it or giving us tools and resources to be able to deal with that can stop people running, because at the end of the day, like, it's us just focusing on what could be that we think we like. It's like people buying a nice car, or you wanted to play NRL. For me, it was the same thing. And you're like, if I get that, life's going to be like, we have this built up idea of what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of the NRL players, you probably know some, you speak to them and they're like, well, it's not all it's cracked up to be. Because once again, they're doing the same thing, but now they're worried about losing their spot.
Yeah.
And what we have, and you know, for me, when I was in France, I wish I had the mindset that I have now there. Like, I would have loved it, because everything, the only difference is just being present.
100%. 100%. And that's probably my story. I think in the next stage that we'll get to in a second, I sort of defined what I thought was happiness again, and I sort of learned that wasn't. So I go through those 2 years of footy and over there, and literally it was footy during the week, party on the weekends. Footy during the week, party on the weekends. We got a weekend off, we're off. Yep. To another place to party. So, and Monday, Tuesday, you're not functioning, you're not enjoying. It's just, and that's where the dark days do hit. But I got to a point of that, I was sick of living out of a suitcase per se, and I was ready to go home. And I was ready to start that next stage. Right? Okay, footy's not going to be a thing. I'm still going to play it, but I need to start my career. I need to get back in and do that. But by starting my career, I mean get money.
Yeah.
Get a high paying job, because that was my new definition of success in my mind. It was like a flick the switch. No longer my definition of success is playing footy at the highest level. It's working at the highest level. So we come back, got an opportunity with Westpac to move into banking, where I now meet my now wife. I meet my now wife, even though I broke every one of her rules that she had.
Stop it, mate.
But that started a new cycle of what I now know as a mental health journey, that if I had dealt with it back when I was 17, it wouldn't have probably got to this cycle. So met my wife, Westpac, we're going all well, was hitting goals at work, starting to become successful, starting to get on this role of success in, hey, I'm pretty good at this, I found something I'm good at, new identity. And when you look back at it, history repeats. So this is back to when I was going through school, footy working, footy's happening. So I'm starting to go through that cycle, met my wife, and she had said that she wasn't going to date someone younger, wasn't going to date a footballer, and sure as hell wasn't going to date the new bloke at work.
Tick, tick, tick.
Yeah, so that was probably the one bit in my life that was going along really well, and the business stayed stable. So we through working at the bank, they were pretty strict on dating and things like that. So we actually kept it secret for a year.
Nice.
Which was pretty cool. Now that we look back at it, it was fun and things like that. But we both worked hard. She was really successful at her job as well. And the money, we started to move up, started to move into lending and things like that. And the money was good for, I think it was 25, 26 at this time. But again, not dealing with my shit. Defining success by money, bank account building, living a fast lifestyle again. Out playing footy, then out on the weekends, recovering on the weekend, recovering on Sunday, go to work. And I just got in this vicious cycle again. And then I put everything in my identity. I still had my footy. I'd gone to Bulimba by then, back to Bulimba.
Back to the doggies.
Yeah, so that was really good. But again, it was because it was a local footy side. It was a party lifestyle again, so it was part of that. So this all defined, we went through this cycle again, got to like a pinnacle, and I put all definition on money and bank account and status of my job and rolling like that. And again, at footy, we're going really well at footy. I was heavily involved in the back office's footy as well. So if you ask anybody, I was happy. I was always smiling, involved in anything off the field, on the field. But then there was this dark side, and this is when I started to notice that I was having issues, there was something further going on. I started to have days where I just wanted to get out of bed, which I had previously, but just put them down to being hungover or tired from footy. I started to know that I had to put on a mask when I was going to work some days or going to footy so no one knew. I started to have thoughts of what's this all mean and what else is happening, and this was starting to become sort of a daily occurrence, and then it would disappear for a period of time and things like that. Again, my personality was, this is just tough, this is just life, move on with it. And it wasn't until some different things happened at work and some things with values, and I won't go into that specific thing, but something happened and maybe my world was going to come crashing down with the job and income and things like that, and that sent me on a spiral. I really spiraled and took me to probably the darkest day of my life. And I remember whenever I had to work, I left work and I went home, and it was sort of mid-afternoon, and I'd rung my wife and I said, you need to come home now. And she normally wouldn't just leave, but she knew there was something different. And if I ask her now, she probably says that there were signs and things that again, she didn't sort of pick up on or notice. And it took me to the point of when I remember sitting in the kitchen and I contemplated ending it. That's where I got to, because I couldn't deal with the fact of my second identity could possibly be taken away. I moved a week down the track, that was never going to happen. It was my own mind, and my wife walked into to me with a knife to my wrist, and she says, as harrowing it was, she knew I wasn't going to go do it, because when she got there, she was able to take the knife away and stop it there. But just to have that mindset. And I had the, again, most loving family, parents, an amazing person in my life that would become my wife, the best set of friends you could ever ask for, the closest set of friends you could ever ask for, just not even my footy friends. These are lifelong friends of their kids and they're like cousins. Yep. And no one knew.
What was missing for you?
True definition of self-worth, but the ability, actually knowing what was going on in my head. Now these had gone on, if I look back, this had gone on in my head from pretty much that day I did my leg. Before that, I can't even remember anything like this. But did I have some traits of this that come through? And in my head, I'm like, this can't be right. Like, I can't be depressed. I can't be lonely. I've got all this around me that's so good. I've come from the best background. People, and it was kind of a bit of a thing to say, it's not fair for me to have this because there's other people that have got way worse lives that aren't struggling. And I was more saying it's you're being a sook. You're not dealing with life really well. And it wasn't from that moment that, and I still remember it clearly, my wife and I don't know if we were engaged or just about to be engaged, because that all happened pretty quickly. But I knew from the day I first sort of went on a date with her that would be my wife.
That's awesome. And
it's reigned true, because I don't think there'd be many other people that sort of would go through what I've gone through, what I've put her through, and still be smiling at the other side. So, but she said, and my wife's not backward in coming forward. She said, you need to sort your shit out, or I'm not going to marry you and I'm not going to have kids, because it's not fair. You need to spend some time on yourself. And that meant doing something that I didn't think I'd ever do, and that was going to see a psychologist at that time. And I still remember we did it through work. She came for the first one. I think I walked out of the waiting room 4 or 5 times, and she just kept saying, if you walk out and leave, that's it. But and people might say that's harsh, and you read all the stuff about when you support someone with mental health, she probably did everything that's wrong by the book. It was everything right by me. Because she knew I come from a tough love culture, things like that, that was the best way to talk to me.
Yeah.
And I ended up going in there, and it's still when the guy came out, it was this tall, like, and I don't mean offensive again, but the nerdiest looking guy. And there, my wife's like, no, not him, please don't. Please don't let this be the guy you've got to open up to. And we went in there, and he asked one question, and I just remember just breaking completely down and just gushing out everything for the last 10 years. And even my wife sat back and she's just like, I didn't even know you were dealing with this shit. Like, you covered it up that well. Every single day you covered it up. You turn up to footy, barely miss the training session, you turn up to a party, you're talking. So you were the one, I was the one engaging with my friends in texts and things like that.
Yeah.
I didn't recluse from the world, I didn't pull back from the world. But all of a sudden I knew what I was dealing with. And I think that was the start of my journey now. And that guy didn't work out to be the right guy for me. I went on to find another guy through my doctor.
Yeah. And
I think that's if I have one thing I can say to this whole thing, don't just give up because you don't click the first couple of times before you try. Because we'll get to the next stage of my journey. And I can't commend the guy I met that well because he was real, just a guy. And he talked about life and party and things like that. He goes, I'm not going to tell you never stop partying again, or not do it again, or go off and do that again, because that's wrong with me. Like he said, that's just stupid. We need to put boundaries in to deal with this. But the biggest thing he taught me was to recognise what I was dealing with. I still kind of deny that I deal with depression and things like that. It's my way of dealing with it. I say I deal with mental health issues.
Yeah.
Which is probably still something I'm coming to, but I now tell people I deal with that. I now talk to people about that. And the biggest thing he gave me was the mechanisms to recognise it, and then some tools and that to deal with it. Now I still get it wrong, still to this day, but it's a lot easier. And the biggest thing that I learned was acknowledging it. But it's a daily, and this is what again a lot of people don't realise, that it's something that I want to make sure that whoever's listening, to friends, to family, or anyone, that you've really got to be willing to listen and be open to someone and notice someone, because they won't give you signs, they won't give you anything. And still to this day, we spoke about before we came on this, that there'll still be days I'll be driving for one of the best meetings, and I'll be driving from spending time with my kids, which breaks my heart to say, but some thought will come into your head, and something slightly's gone wrong prior to that, or and a thought will come into their head. What do I just? And it's such a typical thing. The thing that you be driving, and you just feel like twisting the wheel, see what happens. And when I say, people will be like, "What do you mean, seeing what happens?" I dead set mean seeing what happens. See what does it? Let's put this in the universe's hands. And that's some thoughts that I've had. Still even up until probably this has been the longest bit since coming up and dealing some things with you that we'll talk to. But I realise it's a daily thing. I've acknowledged it's going to be for the rest of my life. And people say, how did you do that? And you've got your kids, and yeah, they're my shining light. And I want to do that, but it still doesn't take away what goes in my head.
I think it's because I experienced similar things, and I think, one, you look about all the justifications you have to try and find for yourself. You're like, I can't be feeling this. No, I can't. Got the best life, the best friends. Couldn't possibly. Rather than just, how about we just learn to just accept what is. You don't try to justify all the reasons why you're fucking happy. Sometimes you're stoked, right? Or same with love, you don't go through and justify why you love someone and say, sick, I'm in love. But with mental health or depression, anxiety, all that sort of stuff, like, no. I've got to justify this, my life's fucking good. And then we just put more of a burden on ourselves rather than going, you know what? I feel fucking terrible today, I feel sad, or I'm fucking scared. May not know why, but at least if we can acknowledge it, then you can start asking the next sets of questions. And I think even normalizing what you were just talking, I don't want it to be like a parade party, but there's fucking plenty of blokes that I speak to that have similar thoughts. And it's like, okay, well, at least if you're going to open up and talk about it to me, then, we can, work it out, or refer you to maybe seeing a psychologist or finding the right help for you. But there's so many blokes who've been where you've been, been where I've been, where we're like, I can't even talk about that. So now I'm going to bottle that up, and maybe I am a fucking weirdo because I'm having those thoughts. But hey, I'm the fucking first person to put my hand up, and I think even going over that balcony we got just there, I'm like, some days, imagine flying.
Exactly, and it's to the point of it's sometimes when the happiest things are happening that you get some of these darkest thoughts, and it's really hard to define. And it's just about, I found, acknowledging, and I actually, in some essence, talk to that thought and say, yep, I know you're there, man.
Cheeky bastard.
But I now got coach to deal with. I now talk to my wife about it. I now talk to a select group of friends about it. And it's funny when you talk about those friends, the ones you talk to aren't your ones normally in your circle. There's 2 or 3 people in my life that I'll actually talk to about it.
Yep.
I'll talk honestly about it. And 2 or 3 of them have been fucking brutal in their mind, which is great. But there's a couple of people that were in my life when I was a young kid and taught me a lot how to be a man. And then it's amazing how they come back in your life at different times. So just when I was going through some stuff again, like that person's back, and now I find we sort of support each other through that. But it's about finding that with your partner too. And it's about with your kids, and there's still shit. I get shit so wrong still right now. And people will look, and it's for me, it all comes back to, and I now realise it's a fear of being average too. I have this massive fear that, hey, if you'll just do that, supply for your family, you're happy, your kids are safe, you're enjoying life, that's not fucking average. Why are you putting so much pressure on yourself to be better? And it's only been the last sort of 6 to 12 months that I've stopped looking out. So I've really redefined what success looks for me. It's not how much money's in my bank account, it's can I help my family live the lifestyle I want to live. So that's a certain number. I really don't give a shit if it goes over that, to be perfectly honest. And then it's about what does success look from, like friendships and things like that. And I was always a person, and my friends will attest for this, I think they say I'm the biggest sufferer of FOMO there is in the world, but it was redefining on if I go to that to please someone else and at the detriment of my wife and kids, or who am I really putting things for? So it was redefining. And I found that the other friends are the ones that actually like go home, like you shouldn't be here. But I still get it wrong now, and people will look and go, this person he just loves the party. That's right. Well, it's not. When I party and I get it wrong, and there was instances right up until, and still probably even since I've become part of the Man That Can, but it's really what triggered me to go Man That Can. It was a wedding we went to, and I got taken away out of control, and it was sort of, you go to a world that's just, you've got none of those issues, and there's no thoughts, you just feel free, and it took me to longer than I thought, and I know my mum was there helping with my kids, and I then didn't go home because I was ashamed of what I was walking into with my mum, my wife and my kids there, and then I did the stupid thing and just kept partying, which is the wrong time, but in my mind that was the best option to do.
Why do you feel it was the best option?
Because I didn't have to face reality.
To going back to that avoidance or escapism.
And I didn't have to face that thing of being shit.
Yeah.
Like I could still portray this, yeah, I'm good at this and things like that. And that led me to, it was always defined that they were going to the coast and everything like that afterwards, but I got home to an empty house. And that was a reality that I needed, because it was to a point that, hey, do I want to go down this lifestyle? Do I want to continue to do this and put things in jeopardy? And is this what you want to do? Come home when you're down anyway, and we all know, everyone knows who's been out and partied and things like that, that it gets deep then. So that was a really good reality check, and I think I've heard it so many times with blokes on your podcast. That's when they really delve into your page in those times, and that's when I come across your thing, and I think that led me to the next step, and is what I want to make sure people realise, that don't just define you're dealing with your mental health or dealing because you're talking to a psychologist or psychiatrist, whatever you want to call it. Because I'd reached a point Now he still has a point that I will go back to every now and again when things get bad, but you got to find something else that works for you. And for me, that was, I didn't realise it, but that was the man at camp. And I delved around it for a while. I knew your story from, I think I knew you from, as you do, cross paths out and that as a little younger fella. So that's what appealed to me, the authenticity of it. Because I knew you'd been exactly where I was. Different stories, but you'd lived that footy party lifestyle and going from there, where I think there's so many people out there that people latch onto that they're not real. They tell you one thing and then you see them
doing something
completely different. So that was great. And that gave me some things to deal with everyday life, like to deal every day through 12-week plans. And I think again, that got back to where I function my best.
Yeah.
Structure, footy, and like when footy is, you go to training, you work on things you got to work on, you go out and put it into play on a Saturday. Well, with life, that's day to day. Give me some things to cope with. Like-minded blokes that realise, hey, this is just average. I'm not weird because I've got these thoughts. I'm not weird. And then you meet some really inspiring people, and again you go, it's not, it gets you to go, well, I'm dealing with my stuff, but it gives you the thing that will go, well, okay, I can deal with this with the right mechanisms.
Yeah.
And it's challenged me to be a far better father, a far better husband, and then I think a far better person in general, because I'm still, and again, blokes at footy would probably, if they listen to this, they'll sit there and go, what the hell is he talking about? You wouldn't pick up on this because you won't notice a difference. My friends won't really notice a difference. The people at footy won't really notice a difference. The people at work won't really notice a difference. But my wife and kids, and I notice a difference.
Yep.
Like I said to you, I think with my parents listen to this, they'll probably be sitting there scratching their heads saying, hold on, he's helped us deal with through things through our family, like and things, and help. And that's what I always did. I was always helping other people, and it's only been in the last since that time of the darkest day in my life that I've worked on it. But it's only now that I invest in it daily and weekly with an actual clear plan, because you can only go to the psychiatrist so often, or psychologist, I don't know what he was, but whichever one he was, you don't go to him every now and time, and he gives you some triggers where this is a weekly thing and there's accountability, which I've really enjoyed. Yeah, I've still got it wrong, but I'm finding I'm getting it right more than a lot of times.
I think it just makes it, like, for me as well, like I still see a psychologist and it's fucking awesome. But then one of the biggest things that I needed in my life was to know that everyday blokes I could talk to about it and we're going through similar things, because it's just like much of us may idolize, you know, we've all got people you look up to, whether it's an NRL player or basketballer or whoever it is that you look up to, and you go, their life's been perfect. Like Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, like his journal. And his biggest thing is like, you know, people think my life's been amazing, but here's the real raw part of it, and we've all got that. Yeah. And I love the fact that every Friday, you know, we get together and you get to hear, and going back to what you were saying before, but like, it's continuing to inspire us to grow, because there'll be new people coming in, or someone will just start feeling confident to share certain aspects of their story, and then it makes you think differently and go, you know, because I don't even have my phone, but your iPhone, right? Every update, like, fuck, this is the greatest thing. Surely they can't beat this iPhone 12 with an iPhone 13, and then next year it's better, because everything that we're doing in our life, from parenting to being a mate to working your business or whatever it is, we can find those 1%ers, and you can get it through lived experience, which is brilliant, or you can get it from other people as well, from whether it's mentors or just mates who are happy to talk about it. Because if you'd been speaking about this 10 years ago, who fucking knows where your life would be at, or who knows the ripple effect that it may have had. But once again, maybe it wasn't also the right time. Everyone's journey is unique, but you know, I guarantee you there's heaps of guys that you play footy with, guys that I still know that play footy. Actually, I have fucking blokes reach out all the time who are like, I related with this story, I really want to share mine, I want to talk. And it's like, because there's people every day that we go, yeah, their life's good, but they're fucking burning on the inside. Yeah,
and I think that's what it does, and it's given you something that's real, and you hear real life stories, and each week there's things, and the best thing about it is everyone falls off the wagon when we talk about it, and everyone admits it, and everyone is honest about it, and it's not to say, and this is, I've come to peace with this, it won't be cured. It's not going to be cured. It's I'm going to have to deal with it every day, if I want to be here for my kids and I have to deal with it every day. And the other side of it is by me doing this, my wife and I's relationship's growing. And again, everyone looks from the outside that, well, they must have the best. No, it's not. And throw kids into that puts so much extra strain. But my wife and I are willing to work at it, and we continue to work hard. Like, she's an absolute saint, and I can't speak more to that. Like, I honestly wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her, because I would have gone down a dark path, and I reckon it would have been speaking in my memory, and that's maybe a really harsh thing to say. And without her, I wouldn't be here. And still to this day, my life, I'm allowed to do things because she understands how important it is. And again, it's that whole, I keep getting back to it, and the best thing that my wife and I have is we kind of don't give a shit what other people think of how a marriage should look.
Fucking oath.
Because we're constantly said, how do you let him do that or do this? And no one really knows what goes on in that household. We've had some horribly tough times. We continue to work at it, but it's not just because of why people think we'd have those tough times. It's not because of this. And it's about, and through the man that can, it's not just about improving ourselves. It's about improving us as men, us as husbands, us as fathers, us as people, us as community members. But it's also the stuff that we talk about. My wife's like, yeah, we're really good. We implement some things together and things like that. And then, because everyone thinks you have kids and that's your inspiration in your life. Yes, it is, and I do anything for them. But it still doesn't take away from the dark thoughts. Like, when you have those dark thoughts, the kids don't, nothing comes into it. And that's where now, through things, through plans and acknowledging it, and I find a way to bring them to it and go, right, that means I wouldn't see that face and then I wouldn't hear him say that again. I won't hear my daughter speak.
Yeah.
I won't get to do things like that. So yeah, it gives you that purpose, but without a plan, you can still go. I could still easily be off doing what I used to do, and I still do it every now and again. I still go off and party when I shouldn't, but there's instances now where I find myself weighing up the options, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to go home now, or I'm going to plan. And for me, and it sounds ridiculous, but it still is a plan. Like, even on the weekend, we had a plan. I drove. That was it. I was going to watch a footy game afterwards. That was our plan. There was little bits inside me when we were there to go, you know what, I could just stay and go home. But no, that can't happen, and I think that's what's happening each and every time.
But as you said to me during the week, what's the day, Monday, it must have been last week, where it was like, it's when things are starting to go really good that you fall off the wagon again, because we think we've nailed it, we think we've mastered it, and it's with anything in life. Day in, day out, you got to put the reps in. If you don't put the reps in, you lose the muscle.
Yeah.
And that's, once again, we all, myself included, fall off the wagon with various things. And when your life starts to get a bit shaky, you can, if you have the awareness, you can go, oh, need to get back on the wagon. But it's not about crucifying yourself or belittling yourself or bashing yourself up over it. It's like, it is what it is. Life is so fucking distracting. Yeah. And I haven't thrown kids in the mix yet, but yeah. I can't imagine what that's like. But life's crazy enough as it is. So we're bound. If you don't get distracted, you're a fucking superhuman. Yeah. And I want to meet you. On the show. And
I think that was the key, and that's the best thing I'm learning as I go. And that was the key. Like, everything was going really, really well, and then little things like I stopped going on Friday. I found an excuse not to go to Friday. Stop looking at my 12-week plan or doing those little things, and then all of a sudden, I noticed I'm like, I'm starting to go back down this little hole. Some thoughts started to come up. Those thoughts mean my default was I'll just go out and bend or something. So I'll get rid of it. That would be, and that's still there. But then I'm like, no, I'll get back into what I know is working, and lo and behold, got on a call on Friday, bounced off that, talking through different things, work, had a great weekend with the stuff that's actually my definition of happiness, even though I'll put it to the side sometimes, spend a whole weekend with kids and friends, and was able to go to that function and go home with my wife and allow her to have a few drinks as well, but then go home with the kids, do the kids' bed, then go to footy and sit with a close friend that I hadn't seen for a while, two friends, and that was perfect. Wake up on Sunday fresh, Mother's Day, eat street with, and that was starting to go, well, hold on a second, this is what I define as happy. taking out the monetary side of it, taking out the career side. I've just got new career goals, and I'm doing some different things that is way out of my box. But that's not going to be what defines me again. It's going to work hand in hand. And I think putting all my eggs into one identity, because I'm about to deal with the thing, and it's probably one of the reasons why I love playing footy still. I do.
Yeah.
I can still compete where I want to compete. Half the reason I still play footy is because who am I without it?
Yeah.
And yes, I'm a father and I'm a husband and I work, but I'm scared that that's going to be there's going to be no new purpose. So that's where not putting it all in one basket. So the career will potentially grow and do with that. So that'll be one identity. Then can I move into some coaching, and that'll be another identity. And then my family, that'll be the number one identity.
Well, I would challenge that and say that everything that you do is a makeup of your identity, but rather than doing, you're so focused on doing this, doing that, and granted I do the same, but because we do things, they become a part of our identity. Like, I am a lawyer, I am a coach, I am I'm this, that, and the other, and the doing makes us up as individuals rather than going, how about I just be, and whatever I choose to be doing at this point in my time is an area of focus, is an area of interest in who I am being in this moment.
Yeah.
Because then we aren't defined by something that maybe we've outgrown, right? Like for me, I outgrew footy. I still miss it, and I miss the boys, and I miss there's so many things that I miss, but I've gained so much more because I've learned to let go of that and go, okay, well, currently, and I say to people all the time, will I be doing the Man at the Camp project in 10 years? I don't fucking know. Yeah. I love it currently, but who knows where life's going to take me, because I'm not attached to it. It's fulfilling everything that I've ever wanted right now, but as I have kids or something may pop up that goes, that sounds interesting. Because at the moment, I just want to be happy in every single moment. And if I can find new challenges or new ways to be, to find more fulfillment, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to go, shit, I've just built this company and everything.
I think that's right, and you helped me through that with my latest role when I moved my previous job. I was defined by a paycheck and defined by the role, and it was slamming my mental health. Like, it broke me to a point of, I spoke to you, but that's what made me come into and do this, because I went into a deep dark hole again, and my wife was actually worried that I was going down that path again, and I was so defined by it. But now I'm just like, you know what? That's not going to define me. I'll move on and open myself up to a new experience. And like what you said, it wasn't allowing me to be happy. I missed so much time with my boy, and then add in footy and party, and I missed so much stuff that I will never get back there. But why would I just stay there? And it's the old saying, and it's probably my dad in some ways has done that, but I look back and take some leaps, and he did everything for us and stayed in a role, and he often says he should have done this. He should have done that. So you probably, if there's one thing I take that I'll do differently from Dad, it's that, have a crack at something and do it that way, because it can be taken away like that. And I realised that I was performing really well at work, I was doing really well, changing management, and they did not give a shit. And I'm like, well, if I can be performing and be doing really, really well, what's going to happen if I'm not?
Yeah.
And why do I want to spend so much time there? And that's again realigned what's important to me, what's valuable to me, and I'll go and find something that fits that rather than let that fit the lifestyle. And people thought I'm crazy because it was and I've spoke to you still through this 6 to 9 months where I've gone back around in the circle, and it's become, you can have the money conversation, and you always bring it back to, well, hold on, why did you do it? What's that given you? And that's given me so much more time with my daughter and my son, but my daughter's going through the same stage that I missed. And it's simple little things. When I said to my wife, I'm like, I remember Jackson, like doing this with Jackson. She goes, I don't mean in the bad, but in the worst way, being up front as she is. You just weren't fucking here. You weren't here to see that. And then because now I look back, and that's when I probably wasn't dealing with my mental health so well, work was such a roller coaster, just locked my way in the room. And that's what people don't understand, that when you're in that state, it's a struggle to get out of bed. And you don't want to do anything else. And half the time on a Sunday, I wouldn't even be that sick. I wouldn't even be hungover enough that I couldn't get up and go and see the wife and kids. So I didn't want to be in life. I didn't want to be part of life. I didn't want to get up for it. And that was all coming back to, again, of building someone else's empire at a big corporate company.
Yeah.
That really, I was staying there for a status symbol because it was a paycheck and it was a really high job for a younger, like a 32, 33-year-old bloke.
It's interesting, like we're reading the 4-Hour Work Week for those listening in the inner circle at the moment, and you know, it talks about absolute and relative income and which one's the wealthiest, right? And say for the example, I'll just make up because I can't remember his figures, was like if you're only working 10 hours a week and earning $1,000, so essentially $100 an hour, or 40 hours a week, still earning $1,000, but essentially making 25 bucks an hour. So who's wealthier? Like obviously, you know, they talk about obviously you have that number that you need to support your quality of life, but after that, like, for me, even like my goal is not to make more money out of my business. My goal is to go, okay, well, how can I maintain the income that I'm making and work less hours?
Yeah.
And for me, because I want, as you said, like I've said to Amy, like I don't want to have kids until I know that if I want to not work and I want to stay at home, and that's because that's what's important to me.
Yeah.
And I think tying it back into what you said and the reason why we have a 12-week game plan, if you don't have a goal for what you want from your life, I guarantee you very rarely you're going to get it. Right? The reason why we have accountability is because life gets in the way, as we've spoken about. We need that. And the reason why we have the weekly calls where you guys get to communicate is you've got to flex the fucking muscle. If you can talk about it in a group or get feedback, or even someone might say what you're thinking, you can then express it and communicate it where it needs to be had. But it blows my fucking mind, Cambo, that it's the most simple tools, and I utilize it with you guys, but I also have in my, like with my coach and everything, and people just go, oh, it's not worth the time. I'm like, are you fucking crazy?
No.
These simple things done consistently will blow your mind and change your life.
Yeah, and I think that's life. Like, you know, when someone looks at life goals, I want to be a millionaire. Okay, cool. And why? And that was my definition, I think. I wanted money in a bank account. I wanted the cars, the things to live this certain lifestyle, to go travel and things like that. And that's one thing kids do. Kids make you realise that money ain't shit. It doesn't matter. If you can put food on the table, you don't have to. So I use the word worry. I don't want to have to worry how I'm going to put food on that table. I don't want to have to worry how I'm going to pay a bill. Now that's, I've got it out in my head, and it's not crazy.
Yeah.
And anything over that's a bonus. And people say, but don't you want it? My natural personality will drive whatever I do to continue to improve and be better, which is going to naturally drive up things, but it's not going to be defined by the dollar value now. And it's opened my mind up to experiencing or looking into other avenues of making money.
And you think about this, right? Just going off what you were saying, because I'm experiencing this at the moment as I'm not working as much. You're not just going to fucking automatically one day hit that jackpot of money and go from working however many hours you're currently working, having poor relationships, this, that, and the other, and then all of a sudden go, oh, the money's there, now I'm a fucking awesome communicator, I'm a great dad, and I know how to chill the fuck out. Doesn't happen.
No. I'm
struggling with that at the moment, trying to learn how to chill out because I've been so used to working my ass off. And I know that, same with the relationship, there's so many things I'm personally experiencing that I know you would be, and anyone listening, it does. Once you get that golden ticket, you still got to fucking work on everything else.
Well, and that's like what if I got to those goals I had, was my mental health going to go? Was my mental demons, was that going to disappear?
Thank you.
Yeah, but it wasn't, and it's actually now that through struggles that I've actually done with it, and now I realise, well, I need to get that shit right more importantly than earning income, because that's what's going to take me away from my kids. That's what's going to take me away from my wife. And then that's that thought of going, well, am I better off? No, I'm not better off not here. I'm better off here fixing that shit than working crazy hours or earning a really good income and then just going down that path of whatever it is, partying or going and sitting by the water contemplating thing and not going home to my kids still, because that were my two options. I'd go and party, or I'd go down a deep hole and contemplate the inevitable. And I struggle, you'll still see you looking at because I still struggle talking about what that inevitable is, because I'm just like, that's permanent. But and that's the thing I've realised, well, I need to invest in this stuff. And if that means
invest in this shit.
I think I've been real polite.
That's what I was like. Come on, just let it.
But invest in the deep shit. But that's often stuff that like the work came easy.
Yeah.
Footy came easy. But then that stuff's hard. that stuff's scary because holy shit, you've got to be real with yourself. And they're saying, and I'll bring it out, and the bloke looking in the mirror is the one guy that doesn't lie. And this has been, and I still to this day, it scares me, it's the stuff I'm unpacking. And I know my wife's seeing it grow, but there's so much more growth there than there is at work. And that's going to make, and what people don't realise is they invest all this time into work. Where if you invest in this shit, stuff actually starts helping. I'm amazed what's starting to open up in my life because I'm investing in this stuff, which is making me look at happiness different, be a different person, deal with stresses way better. Yeah. Not have the roller coasters thing. So I think my mental health's flatter. Yeah. There's still days where I have thoughts, and like I said, it's the most random times when you have it. I don't like going on long drives because that's been too much time with my brain. But it's working on that shit that's starting to open up doors with other stuff. And it's I think it's even helped my footy. Like if you told me 2 years ago I'd be playing in the BRL comp, no, I wouldn't have. I'm the lightest I've been in so many years, but that's because I was kidding myself with, I can still play a full game of footy, so I must be fit. Well, lo and behold, I got up to 117 kilos again. Yeah. Well, now I'm sitting at 104, 105, right? And again, I don't define it by weight, but it's a good testament. And that's what I'm saying, that if I hadn't unpacked that stuff, and I'm still unpacking it, like from what I've unpacked from the darkest day when I tried to end it all to now, is far deeper than what I thought I was dealing with on the darkest day. Mm. But I deal with it way better. Like the stuff I've gone through in the last year, if I went through that before that darkest day, I don't think my wife would have had a chance to stop it. Because that's far, what I went through in the last year with work, and again, people won't understand how badly it beat me up. There's probably one or two people that realise, because again, you don't talk about it, you don't open up on it, we touch on the surface with it. That's what I'm proud of too, because if I hadn't have started, if my wife hadn't have forced me, I keep coming back to that, someone's got to force, and that might mean you telling a mate, or you telling your brother, or your dad, or your parent, or whoever it is. You might drag them by the collar, and it might cause you to have arguments, because it caused us to have arguments. It nearly caused us to split. But it was the older mate that made me go. Yeah. So that's the other side of it. If you know someone's got issues, I'm all for being there to listen to that, but I'm also for at a point, stick your foot on their throat and virtually have that honest conversation with them. Because that's what saved me. That might be what they're waiting for. When we come to mental health, people like to dance around it too. People don't like to be real. You can pick your mark, and you might not be the person, but talk to your other friends around there, and it might be another person in your group 100%. That can be real. And don't sugarcoat it. If you're suffering, don't sugarcoat it. Yeah, suicide is a real option for most of these people. Don't sugarcoat that fact. Yeah, it's scary and it's hard and
we need to talk
about
horrendous.
People. But facing it front of, but that's where I feel it's about finding that person too. So I've got a couple of different people I lean on for different feelings in my mental health. But then on the flip side as well, I'm so conscious with the young, especially the young blokes at footy, some people at work, I actually raise the fact that I deal with mental health. Yeah. And they open up, and all of a sudden I found that they just open up because they're like, oh, if you can deal with it, I can deal with it. Or if you've got it, that's okay. Yeah. But I think it's back to that, and that's the stuff you don't realise that, how strong your mind, and that is, I know the power of my mind, and like I keep coming back to it, I just shake my head I thought I was bad then to what I've gone through, and throwing the kids side of it and that as well, and dealing with that. Amazes me how I've dealt with, my wife and I have dealt with the last sort of year.
Just highlights the importance of so many of us are preparing for the worst in terms of we're anxious, we don't take action, we live in fear, this, that and the other, rather than going, okay, well, if I'm going to have a Barney with my missus, which, disagreements happen, I want to make sure that I've built that fucking good of a communication gateway or a solid foundation in the relationship that we can have that, and we know we're both coming from the best possible place. Or financially, I know that if a recession were to happen, or if all terrible things would happen, that I know I'm going to be fine. And you refer to investing in this, but investing in yourself. The moment that you invest in yourself, you gain greater self-awareness, you're able to make decisions faster, you're able to communicate and articulate yourself better. And when you start doing that, your life starts fucking thriving because you know what you want. You know the people to spend time around with, the people to get out of your life. You know what to say yes to, what to say no to, and that's why the trajectory is like, it's, you know, a plane taking off where it's like, and then just all of a sudden it skyrockets, and that's what's happened for my life. I can see it happening for yours. I can see it happening for so many people because they're putting in the work.
Yeah, and I think maybe our society's doing a bit of a flip like that, because people are taking a look at how people are making money, or taking different gambles, but we're so thin. And I was in the corporate world. There was no other way.
Yep.
Just continue to climb the corporate ladder, but what sacrifice. And it would absolutely have made the amount of people that are probably dealing with this on a daily basis, and they're very good at leaving their shit at the door, as I say, and that was my biggest attribute. Whether I walked into a friend's house, whether I walked into a party, whether I walked into footy, whether I walked into work, I could leave my shit at the door. But you're right, it's invest in yourself and you see what comes, and 100% humans always look, whoa, what if that doesn't work? What if it does fucking work? And so what if it doesn't work? Like, find a way. If you're the type of person, just back yourself to have a support network that if you are hard on your ass and you've got to think, well, just know, like, I know deep down, if it came down to it, like I did it when I left my other job. I left that job, people called me crazy. And I still remember certain people at my old company sat me down and said, are you mentally stable? Which is such an insult in normal, because no, I'm not. But it's not to do with the fact that I'm leaving my job, it's the job. Because I had a newborn, a kid, and no income, no job. But the good people in my life, one said, go, do it, you'll be free. Another one of my mates that I said came back into my life, he said, come work with me. And it was labouring. It was back unloading containers, and for a moment there I was proud. I'm too proud, fuck. I did this back when I was 17, 18, and now I'm back on. But I knew deep down in my heart I was willing to do that because it could put food on my table. Was I going to stay there forever? No. But that's what I think people forget, what you'd be willing to do to get to where you want to go.
We get comfortable being comfortable. It's like most people live a mediocre life because of that. And
why not go after something bigger? And then I fell in a really great place where I am now, which has opened me up to be able to work on myself and good people and back to something I really enjoyed. But again, like, that might be a year's time, that might be where my life takes me because of all different reasons. And I think I'm more open to that now. Life's going to throw way more challenges at it, but it's how I deal with that. And I can't run to my two previous options, was end it or go out and party and then deal with the shit afterwards. And that would be challenging. I know deep down in myself that the party option's not right for me. Like, eventually the stints get longer and longer. Elk, me, and that side don't mix at all. I just don't like that, and I've got a personality that again comes out, and I think it's a mixture of my personality and that mental stuff where you go, fuck, if I just stay for another hour, I don't have to go back.
Yeah.
I know what's going to come after that, and I think you don't find the answers at the bottom of the bottle or whatever you're doing at that time, and it only makes it worse. I think I'm learning that more.
Yeah.
I keep saying, and I want people to realise that you still get it wrong. And I think a lot of people in your position, and then when people like myself talk, they talk like it's done, or they talk like they're perfect. I ain't fucking perfect. I'm so far from it. Even swearing now, if my mum listens to this, she'll be right.
My mum.
The amount of times I swear.
You fucking swear so much, I'm like, well, I enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think it's the way you define it, but I think that's the biggest thing I've taken from this, and you're not alone. I know, and my mission now is to how I want to give back to more of this stuff. Like the guys, there's heaps of people that do great things. Like I know some of the boys that started the Living Project and all that stuff, and it's great to see more people that are doing different things, but it's not a quick fix. Some people, and I also, the other way is I've done it, and I'm proud of it. One thing I refuse is, and medication has its place, but I think a lot of times people can resort to that and be reliant on it. I think you've got to actually fix the shit that's actually making you go that way. I think we're in a quick fix society.
Mm-hmm.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that doesn't work for people, because I know people it does work for. But I refer to like Tyson Fury, I love his story. He refers to it that he won't do it, and the best thing for him is to train the rest of his life. And even when he stops boxing, he's going to continue to train.
Yeah.
And his story is so deep, like he's nearly ended it. He tried to put away with the party, got fat, things like that. It's a real relatable guy.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing, that you've got to put. I think a lot of people that will go the medication or the quick fixes, you don't put the plan in place. Like we spoke about, the little things. I'm not doing the little things where I speak about I want to be present at home, or I want to do this, I want to do that each and every single week. I do this on a daily basis. I do this. For me, it's training, eating well, and doing the things that genuinely make me happy. So it's amazing how, like I said, I walked into this Monday, amazing how happy I feel, and you're like, somebody's like, oh, I feel happy today, and you don't really. Before I wouldn't put it as to why, but I spent the whole weekend with the kids. I didn't even have footy on the weekend. So more and more I'm finding that I don't need footy for happiness either. Yeah, it's still a big part of my happiness, but holy hell, I still get to do a hell of a lot of other shit, and that's the stuff that makes me genuinely happy. Yeah, the kids, and my wife will attest to, they frustrate the hell out of you, but there's a thing that kids give you that, and I've missed out on, I'll openly admit, and all I can do is I can't rewrite the stuff I missed out on. I can be there more moving forward. And I think that's, I'm real one to go back and look at if I did this, if I did that. But if I look back through my life, and I say it again, I wouldn't change that accident that I had at 17, because God knows what football player I would have turned out to be. And God knows how I would have dealt with it. If I made it, and that was a big if, it wasn't even guaranteed that I would make it, would have lived in one of these headlines. Because I come from all the boundaries around with a great home with mum and dad, but I've still found a way to go down these paths with my own mind. And what if that just came up in a different way? What if I had it and lost it because of my own fault? Now, if I had it and lost it, I reckon I would have struggled to deal with that more than if I was taken away sort of because of a freak accident. The other big defining thing is I wouldn't have met my wife. Now other people would say, oh, you'd meet, but that person's the person I was meant to meet. And the way that she's guided me and helped me through my mental health, I don't know, I might have met someone else I fell in love with. But would have that person be the right person for that? Then you flow on, like it's that ripple thing that you talk about. Again, if I had chose my other path back after that work function, well, I wouldn't have my kids. I wouldn't have been able to have my friends. What effect would that have my parents? And now I wouldn't be able to tell my story. And I really want to try and tell the story. And I think help people is the wrong word. I don't like the word help.
Empower people, inspire people.
And just get them to talk and find their own journey. And realise there's far more to you, your journey, than what it is. And this is coming from, I understand that option is very real. A lot of the time, and people say, how could you get to that option? I used to be that person as well before I realised what I was dealing with. It's pretty easy. I can get to that option easily. Even now with 2 kids and a wife and a job and putting food on the table and a really nice life, I can get to that option. And that's what people say, until you've walked in their shoes, and you might not have an issue now. Like I said, looking back through my childhood and up to that very moment, there wasn't one set of the thoughts I have now, or the thoughts I've gone through across that year. So it doesn't discriminate. I know everyone says it. It doesn't discriminate. But I think there's something to do with our makeup as men that seems to affect men in a lot more. We can see that in my statistics. But I think as men, you've got to step up, because we've got to create those safe places that people can talk and do that, because it ain't going away.
Yeah, it's even like, I fucking hate the term safe place.
Yeah.
Personally, but it's like just normalizing fucking connection.
Yeah.
It's all we got to do. There's so many, the stigma is decreasing, I believe, but we just need to normalize human connection and going back to the basics. Like, it doesn't need to be a catchy phrase, or it doesn't need to be highlighted. It's just like, just fucking do it. Like,
and I think, like, somewhat I feel, and I look back on it myself, like, think about your last conversations with your mates, and this is probably talking to the younger blokes now, because like you might not have partners and things like that. But think about the last conversation with your mates. It's probably about shit. And it's a good laugh. Or when you've left work and you've had a really shitty fucking day, how often have you just rang a mate to vent?
Blow some steam off.
Or just have a chat about it and say, hey, I just want to talk to you about this. Or how often have you genuinely checked in on a mate, like not just, hey mate, how are you? Or what's going on? Like, genuinely caught up. And I'm quite lucky. I have a group of mates that is very much like that. Like when we catch up once, and they're outside, they're the different side of my mates that are getting to the marriage and kid stage now. But it's a different group. Yeah, but when we catch up, we genuinely catch up with each other's lives. And I know each of them, you catch up individually and it's a genuine, but that we don't talk all the time. And that's the other thing. I think people, to check in on mates, I think you got to talk weekly or things like that. It's not. It's being there and having created that relationship that when shit does go wrong, they'll come to you.
Yeah, they know.
Or they'll turn to you.
Yeah.
And I've been really guilty of that. Like I hope when my friends and that listen to this, they'll probably sit back and go, well, why don't you come talk to me? It's nothing against you, but it was my own people, and there's different people for different things. And just because I may never talk to a certain friend ever about this stuff in my life, doesn't mean I haven't supported them in different ways, because there's friends in my friendship circle that support me without me having to talk to them. And they've messaged and said something at the exact right time.
That's been beneficial.
Exactly right. They'll ring and ask, or just they'll talk to you, or something just at the exact right time, and they don't even need to know what's happened. But I think that's the thing, and just be, as friends or as family, just be so aware of, and don't go looking for it. Like, don't sit there and I'm going to go through each and every one of my friends and figure out who's got
Just
it.
be genuine.
Be genuine. Talk.
I've got one last question for you before we wrap it up. What's your definition of being a man? Did you know this question was coming?
No, but the definition of being a man, I think, I'd say it's whatever defines in your life to be a man. So, but I still genuinely think some stuff reigns true. Like for me, it's being a provider.
Yep.
But that doesn't necessarily mean I have to be the breadwinner. But being a provider. But that's not just a provider with monetary. That's a provider with support to my wife. I provided to my kids. Being a man is a role model. I think there's too much out there, and I reflect to my son more, teaching him what it's like to be a genuine, respectful male.
Yep.
And that reflects a lot to how to treat females. I'm huge on that. So being a role model, being a provider, but I think it's about being stuff to being tough. Stuff to being
tough.
Stuff
fucking like
stuff to being tough, this mentality that men can't cry and things like that. I think it's about just being completely, I think honest is the word, but just not caring what, like I don't, like that question, I pretty much throw it out the window. Define it yourself. For me, it's about being real and honest, but don't be this tough mentality, because I was that for so long that I couldn't cry, couldn't be emotional, couldn't talk about emotional. And I think that flows in everything else, but I still come back to those first two. I think for me it's about being just what a genuine male should do.
Yep.
Now a lot of what our fathers and things like that in the older generation, there's still so much stuff that we should take through to that. Like I know we talk about equality and all this shit, and that's a different thing, but be a genuine male, open the door for a female, be respectful. If you see a female getting yelled at, that step, do something like that, but it starts at home. So I've got a son, whoever's got a son, is so important to define to them what it's like to be a male. And my biggest thing I'm going to teach my son is to be emotional if he wants to be emotional. To cry if he wants to cry, to talk about his emotions. And if that means he doesn't, like he's not an emotional person, well, that's great. But be there and really throw out the definition of what it is to be a man. But I will teach him some of the old stuff of being a male. Yeah, exactly right. So I think good question. I think it's whatever that male.
I think you nailed it, and I think that it's contextual for everyone, right? Everyone has their own understanding, and the reason why I wanted you to share yours was because there's going to be someone out there who relates to yours or relates to blokes on previous episodes that have shared there as well. But mate, thank you so much for fucking coming on and sharing that. I know there'll be a heap of questions, and for everyone watching or listening, just check the show notes and I'll put all your Instagram and all that sort of stuff in there so they can get a hold of you, mate. But it's been an absolute pleasure. And for those tuning in for the first time, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can tune in. There's over 300 episodes, and you can reach out to myself or Cambo. We're actually both part of the inner circle, funnily enough. I'm in there, but you're
you have to be there.
I have to show up. No, you're in there as well, so or jump in the free Facebook group as well. We have over 900 blokes now from all around the world, which is pretty cool. So great place to connect. But thank you guys for tuning in. and come back next week for the next episode.
Thanks, mate.